what I'd like to do is mention our first speaker today. Again, I mentioned Fred Sadler, who tells me that he loves everything about Toastmasters, even the cliches. And he said that to me more than once. So I think that was a subtle hint from time to time. But in any case, he says, today he will be giving his #2 speech in the advanced manual. Humorous Speaking is the name of that manual. And he's entitled that speech, Cliches, the purpose of which is to deliver a 5 to 7 minute speech that opens and closes with humor. Upon completion of this speech, he will have completed the requirements for the Advanced Communicator Silver. Please join me in welcoming Fred Sadler.
Thank you, Art. For everybody's benefit, it's great if you sit in the back and walk up when you get introduced, because then you get applause for a longer period of time. That's one of the cliches of our idyllic world here. I put a sheet of paper out in front of each of you, so please take that out. There you go. Does everybody have a sheet of paper and a pen or pencil? Because I am going to be using a lot of cliches today, and I'd like you each to count them, and at the end of the 5 to 7 minutes, I'm going to ask each of you, I'll go around, how many cliches you heard. There's no penalty, there's no award, it's just listen, hear while you listen. And so, without further ado, I would like you to put your hands together and give it up for one of the most popular cliches of the decade, at the end of the day. At the end of the day topped the charts about 5 years ago, but is holding its own as it comes down the stretch neck and neck with iconic for the most overused cliche of this year. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guest, a cliche is an overused word or phrase, something repeated so often that it has become stale or trite, or even meaningless. Often we use them because we're too lazy to think through what we really want to say, and it's just easier to use a cliche. Other times we actually use them as filler words instead of the dreaded ah or and can avoid the ah counter bell. But at NPS Toastmasters, we're very sophisticated. We're beginning to look at certain phrases such as, I would like to, as in, I would like to introduce our next speaker. The solution, simply cut to the chase and say, our next speaker is. Some popular phrases actually meant something when they were first used, but many were so overused, they actually became cliches, such as William Shakespeare's best aphorisms were brilliant at the time, 500 years ago. Last week we used parting is such sweet sorrow when saying farewell to Tanya Holloway. A present-day literature student, when being exposed to Shakespeare, actually said to the professor, why is this guy Shakespeare considered to be such a great writer? All he writes is cliches. To which she said, have you read the Bible lately? Some cliches, on the other hand, never meant anything in the first place. And my favorite example of this genre is some kind of. I first heard this when a sports announcer about 30 years ago said, that Willie Mays is some kind of baseball player. Which is a little like a speech evaluator listening to Arnie Buss and saying, that Arnie Buss is some kind of speaker. It doesn't mean anything, and to say that in front of it makes it even more inane. That Arnie Buss, of course that's that Arnie Buss, because there's only one Arnie Buss. We don't have to say why it's that Arnie Buss. So this phrase, some kind of, has reached the bottom line of my hierarchy of cliches. The one that's reached iconic status as well, some kind of. Now there are inflection cliches too. One that has swept the nation in the last couple of years is to take a simple sentence, a declarative sentence, and make it into an interrogative. heard that already today. So one might say, I'm a Naval Postgraduate School student, or I'm a Toastmaster. Well, what I'm trying to say is, I'm a Naval Postgraduate student, or I am a Toastmaster. But the inflection sounds like I'm asking a question. Listen to the radio today, you'll hear it probably 20 times about the oil spill. It's an oil spill? Then there's the sports announcer inflection. Growing up in Philadelphia, as some of us did or close by Philadelphia, I remember Byram Song saying, "Today the Philadelphia Phillies are going to be taking on the Buccos of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and Robin Roberts is going to be on the mound." And for years, I have not been able to listen to a baseball game without that inflection in my ears. Speaking of baseball, it's not just words, it's body language. So the typical baseball player's whole thing at the plate has become a cliche in many cases. For example, does that ring any bells? Speaking of baseball, and speaking of politicians, politicians love sports cliches. As in, it's a whole new ball game in this decade. This election will be a game changer. It's crunch time. And even weather people have their own. I was listening to a weather person in Philadelphia lately who talked the whole time about shower activity. It wasn't showers, it was shower activity. We really need. Now I know no one on the Monterey Peninsula would ever say, shower activity is coming in this weekend. One day. Carl Thormeyer. So it's now time to go to your list, and I'll go around the room and tell me how many cliches did you hear? Carl?
I was too busy writing notes.
Too busy? Jim?
I got 24, but you missed the most important one that's used nowadays. It's all good.
It's all good. I have issues with that.
I have 14.
14?
I had 24 also.
24?
I only had 12, I guess I was.
12?
14, but then like 7 with the baseball, and 3 reflections, and 4 some kind of, so
There were
something.
kind of
Over 20.
Cat.
36.
36.
Wow.
Whoa. Betsy.
18.
Not counting repeat instances of the same one, 14.
Oh, I counted repeat.
Yeah, I didn't count it.
Art?
I didn't hear a word.
He was in Slovenia.
And now, without further ado, I would like to turn the podium over to that icon of club presidents, a man who needs no introduction, a living legend, one of the all-time greats, who at the end of the day is some kind of speaker. Art Tastani.